Cannabis Cowboys.
In the last episode of Cannabis Cowboys, we introduced you to the juicy nobility that was instrumental in setting up the Dutch and Swiss offices of Juicy Fields. We visited a letterbox company and a castle and found out that the Prince and the Counts of Luxembourg were not exactly what they seemed to be.
They weren't real counts and princes with a long family tradition. They had married into their titles. But that doesn't mean they were bad people. In fact, they claimed to be innocent. They said the villains in this saga were the people behind the Juicy Fields website and its office in Berlin. And apparently, there was some connection to Russia and Russian organized crime.
There was a lot of hushed talk about Russian criminals and Russian mafia. So we wanted to investigate whether there was any truth in it.
I'm Nicolas Martin.
I'm Andreas Becker.
This is Cannabis Cowboys.
Cannabis Cowboys.
A story about big dreams,
Juicy money,
and never-ending hype. Brought to you by DW. Episode 7. Matryoshka Dolls.
Almost wherever we've looked in our investigation into Juicy Fields, we found links to Russia. Officially, the company had nothing to do with Russia. It was first based in Berlin, Germany, then opened offices in the Netherlands and Switzerland. But there was so much, we started to call it our Russian lead. Let's look at what we'd got. We had a list of names, but most of them didn't mean a thing to us.
The names were published by the new Juicy Fields, right after investors were blocked from their accounts. If you've been following Cannabis Cowboys, you'll recall that the new Juicy Fields is the people at the Dutch and Swiss offices. And they were in a war of tribes with the old Juicy Fields in Germany. The voice you're about to hear is that of Birgit Elisabeth Neumann. She's part of the new Juicy Fields and was hired as a consultant by the Counts of Luxembourg, and she speaks on their behalf.
We will file criminal charges against the owners and operators of the platform JuicyFields.io. Paul Bergholts, Robert Leibach, Alex Weimar, Vasily Kandinsky, Alan Glanse, Erika Misela.
Of those 6 names, only Alan Glanse, the former CEO, was known to the public. The other 5 names were unknown. They had never appeared on the Juicy Fields website or in their newsletters. So when Neumann called them out in the YouTube video we just played, that was, we think, the first time anyone outside of the company, including thousands of investors, had heard of them.
So we had some names that nobody had heard of before. And we had some other information as well. Right after Juicy Fields folded, PDFs were circulated on Telegram and other social media platforms. And those PDFs contained not only the names, but also personal information, contact details, and scans of passports.
The passports were supposedly Russian. What struck us as odd was that the names didn't sound Russian to us. The first belonged to a Paul Bergholts, born in 1983 in Moscow, according to the passport scan. Paul Bergholts was listed as a co-founder and mastermind behind Juicy Fields. That's according to the PDF. Here's an extract, voiced by one of our producers.
Paul Bergholts, probably main head behind Juicy Fields and main decision maker, must have had the idea and developed the platform with a team.
The second Russian passport, according to the same PDF, apparently belonged to a Robert Leibach, born in Moscow in 1984. He too is said to be a co-founder of Juicy Fields.
Robert Leibach, apparently a lawyer and involved in financial transactions, including document forgery, and probably managed banking relationships on faked signatories' phone numbers and email addresses.
For the other names, Alex Weimar, Vasily Kandinsky, and Erika Misela, there were no passport scans, but phone numbers, Telegram handles, and email addresses. The men were also referred to as co-founders of Juicy Fields. The woman was said to be a coordinator and spokesperson for Paul Bergholts, the apparent mastermind.
So we had names, passports, mobile phone numbers, email addresses, and Telegram handles. Not bad, right? We were pretty confident that this was enough to come up with something. After all, we had found out stuff with less information before.
At first, we did the obvious. We called all the numbers, wrote to all the email addresses, and tried to get in touch with the people on social media. But this time, we had no luck. No luck at all. Name searches in various databases brought up nothing. We tried to verify the passport images using a technique called reverse image search. But again, we had no luck.
Then we realized perhaps there was some information about them out there, but we just couldn't read it because we don't speak Russian. So we asked our colleague Eugen Theise for help. Eugen's fluent in Russian, and he's a seasoned investigative journalist, often reporting on how and where oligarchs hide their money. We thought that if there is any information on Paul Bergholts, Robert Leibach and all the others, Eugen would surely find it. A few days later, Eugen got back to us.
Eugen, you speak Russian, and we've asked you to help us a little bit with the research. What were you able to find out about these names?
I was very much surprised to learn that there is absolutely nothing about those people to find in a Russian segment of the internet or social media. Absolutely nothing, which is very unusual because nowadays everyone seems to leave some sort of traces at the internet, at least some social media accounts or some old social media accounts. Some mentions wherever. If you're dealing with people from business, they have some records at the company registers in Russia or in Western Europe, but not in this case.
Which is strange, right? And what a contrast. Absolutely no information about these people on the internet, but at the same time, somebody had posted scans of their passports all over social media. Here's what our colleague Eugen thought about that.
It looked for me a bit funny. It looked like someone maybe wanted just make them look like something they haven't been.
So could it be that these passports too were fake? It would not be the first time in this story that things or people were not what they seemed.
Unlike police, journalists cannot just run a computer search to determine whether a passport is fake or not. But eventually we got word from a source that needs to remain anonymous, and that confirmed what we had been suspecting, that the passports of Paul Bergholts and Robert Leibach, and probably their names as well, were indeed fake.
Looking back, this period in our investigation felt like we had entered a house of smoke and mirrors. Again. From the outside, it looked like a war was going on within Juicy Fields. But who was fighting? Fake aristocrats against fake Russians?
But there was at least one Russian-born man we knew existed. Alan Glanse, Juicy Fields' former CEO.
Money, money, green. Started with a dream.
We've mentioned Alan Glanse a few times in this series. Glanse was the company's public face, even appearing in music videos, before stepping down in the spring of 2022.
We talked to Alan Glanse shortly after Juicy Fields folded. Back then, he said he was innocent and that he had been used. He also said that the rumors that Russians were behind the company were unfounded. Glanse believed that after Russia's attack on Ukraine, Russians had become the perfect scapegoat.
It's fantasies of the people. Because right now is Russia and Ukraine, the war. People want that the Russian is the very bad. The people find something that this is the Russian mafia, a lot of fantasies. Stop fantasy.
But Glanse also told us that there was indeed a person called Paul Bergholts at Juicy Fields. It was this man who had interviewed Glanse in Moscow before hiring him as CEO, Glanse told us. He said that Paul was one of the owners and probably the mastermind behind Juicy Fields.
I saw this guy just only maybe 5-6 times. Paul, I don't know what's his name, Bergholts. He's a very smart guy. He looks like a successful person, and he is smart.
We listened to our interview with Alan Glanse many times. And we thought it was really strange that Glanse seemed unable to remember Paul Bergholts' full name, as if he'd just recently heard it for the first time. After all, Glanse is talking about his former boss, the alleged owner and mastermind of Juicy Fields. And he has trouble remembering his name?
Which brings us back to Money Money Green, the promotional music video Alan Glanse starred in. It showed him on a yacht and in a cannabis greenhouse. But there were also images of Russian matryoshka dolls. Those wooden dolls that you open up and find a smaller doll inside. And that one contains another doll, and so on and so forth.
For us, following the Russian lead felt a bit like opening up an endless supply of matryoshka dolls. An exercise in futility that yielded nothing.
We would have loved to talk with Alan Glanse about all that. But after our initial interview the week after Juicy Fields' collapse, he never picked up the phone again or wrote back.
So we had no choice but to focus on the only man left at Juicy Fields who had, to our knowledge, at least some connection to Russia. Viktor Bitner, the original director of Juicy Fields when the company had just started out in Berlin. The only man who appeared on all the company records. The man who used to make portable grills for street-side sausage salesmen, and the man who may have been involved in a shady deal between Russian and American Secret Service agents. We talked about that in episode 2 of Cannabis Cowboys.
We never had a chance to speak with Viktor Bitner. For us, he remained a mystery, a phantom. So we tried again to get in touch with him after those other names got leaked, but in vain. No answer, no lead, no clue.
What to do? Was this really the end of it? Lots of names and indications, but nothing adding up? Nothing making sense?
But then, one day, something happened. Something amazing. We got an email.
Good evening. I hear you're investigating Juicy Fields.
That was all that was in the email, and we've voiced it for this podcast. The email was unsigned, no name, no ID, except an email address which suggested it had been sent by a person called Anna. But to be honest, at first we thought it was a hoax or spam.
But that didn't stop us from replying. What followed was a conversation that became more and more interesting, exciting even. But it also took weeks to establish. We then moved our chat to an encrypted messenger service. It seemed safer than regular email. We did not know, of course, whether Anna was her real name or whether she was indeed female.
Anna said she was Russian and had inside knowledge of Juicy Fields. She also said Juicy Fields was a scam orchestrated by Russians and that she was willing to share her knowledge with us and promised to reveal what we had been missing until then. Here's another one of Anna's messages.
If you deal with this in an honest and correct way, you can do what all the lawyers, prosecutors and police working on this case will never be able to do. See the part of the Juicy Fields iceberg that is below the water.
So we decided to keep on following the Russian lead. But could we trust Anna? To check Anna's credibility, we asked her some questions that only a real insider would be able to answer. One was about Viktor Bitner. Anna knew about Bitner's failed sausage grill venture and even remembered that company's name. Anna also knew that Bitner had been the director of the first Juicy Fields company in Berlin. But according to Anna, Viktor Bitner was just a straw man.
Viktor is a professional fraudster, and he has ties to a Chechen group of criminals.
It was all very intriguing, and Anna had more to tell, but we had yet to establish her identity. We had a hunch that if we could get a hold of Viktor Bitner, and if he was willing to talk to us, that would be a way to verify the credibility of our source Anna, and a whole lot more.
Anna's mention of Chechen criminals was perhaps more information than we wanted to hear. But we needed to be sure of our source. So we decided that the next time we were in Berlin, we'd try Bitner yet again. And since he didn't answer our phone calls, we'd simply visit his last known address.
The last time we went to Berlin for this investigation was in the summer 2022. It was extremely hot. This time, it was winter and ice cold. Some streets were decorated for Christmas with festive illumination and pine trees.
We knew Bitner's last address from a scan of his German ID card that we had seen and been able to verify. It was in a working-class neighborhood of Berlin. Each of the grey concrete buildings lining the streets had about 8 floors and contained dozens of small apartments.
As we got closer to Bitner's apartment building, we suddenly realized how nervous we were. Anna had got inside our heads with her comments about Chechen criminals. Now that we were there, knocking on Bitner's door unannounced felt like a stupid idea.
Are you a little bit nervous?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is a bit questionable. Like, we kind of expect that he doesn't open the door, or if he does open the door, he would say something like, "I don't talk to you." We would be surprised if he says, "Oh, come in, guys. Let's talk about Juicy Fields." Because
That would be nice, no? Would you go inside and talk about Juicy Fields? About the Russian connection?
of course, you have so many cliches in mind that you would think twice before you step into the apartment of the guy to talk about Juicy Fields. So, in a way, I don't know. I just hope he's not there.
So do I, actually. But, I mean, you're right. It's also about the cliches that we have in mind. And I think it's our job to at least ring the bell and see if he's there.
Next to the entrance of the apartment block, there were rows and rows of letterboxes with name tags and buzzers.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 32 apartments.
No Viktor Bitner on the door, on the bells.
The door was open, so we went in and checked for signs of Viktor Bitner. We found nothing.
So it seems like Viktor Bitner will still remain a phantom for us. Why are you laughing?
So our visit brought up nothing. No Bitner, no leads, no information on the Russian connection at Juicy Fields.
If Juicy Fields was indeed set up by Russians, they were experts at the Matryoshka doll game. We had opened countless dolls and found absolutely nothing.
But we still had Anna. We couldn't be sure that Anna really was the insider she said she was. So we had to meet her in person to see if she was real and to hopefully find answers to our questions.
Was Juicy Fields really set up by Russians? Where was all the money? Which role did the fake aristocrats really play? And was Juicy Fields a tool for money laundering?
Maybe Anna had answers to these questions.
Our conversations via the encrypted messenger app sounded like Anna did have some of the answers. And then, finally, after a longer chat in November 2022, Anna signaled that she was ready to meet us in person.
I hope you understand now that I have valuable information for you. I'm in Russia now, but plan to travel soon. Let's stay in touch and schedule our meeting in about 10 days from now.
The chat ended with a virtual handshake emoji.
But that was the last we saw or heard of Anna.
After that, it looked like Anna had disappeared from the messenger service. She stopped answering. We waited for 10 long days. Nothing. We switched from the messenger service back to the email address Anna had used to contact us in the first place. Nothing. Not after 2 weeks, not after a month. Anna, our source, had disappeared.
We were disappointed, but we were also worried. What had happened to Anna, we wanted to know. Did she get caught? Was Anna still alive? Was it all a hoax? Just another empty Matryoshka doll?
You might think we should have got used to frustration by now. There had been so many dead ends, so many promising leads that brought up nothing. And many people we couldn't reach, or those who refused to talk to us, like the Counts of Luxembourg, for example.
At least the Counts of Luxembourg existed. no matter whether the titles were real or not. But when it came to the Russian connection, we couldn't be sure of anything.
Then again, there was still the website, JuicyFields.io.
The website used to be the heart of the Juicy Fields business, its sales platform.
But when the company folded in July 2022, the website turned into a propaganda machine.
It became a weapon in a war between two tribes in Juicy Fields and published attacks against the Counts of Luxembourg, Thomas Stieger, and others.
It had also announced that a new Juicy Fields 2.0 was about to launch.
And it had told defrauded investors that they would get their money back. In late 2022, a strange video was published on the website. It showed 6 men wearing jeans, hoodies, and Guy Fawkes masks.
You know the ones. They're the masks that show a white face with a mustache and a thin vertical beard. Originally a symbol of the 1605 gunpowder plot in London, the masks re-emerged in popular culture through V for Vendetta, the graphic novel and the movie, and through the hacker outfit Anonymous that uses them as a trademark. In short, these masks have become an international symbol of rebellion.
In the video, the 6 men are all smoking joints, sitting around a laptop from which an electronic voice addresses the community of Juicy Fields investors, the e-growers.
Hello, e-growers. Sorry, security reasons do not allow me to attend the meeting.
The voice then explains a committee had been formed to restart Juicy Fields. The masked men nod their heads in agreement, as if listening to a cult leader. Some awkwardly try to light the next joint, which proves difficult because of the tiny mouth opening of their masks.
Today is the first day of the meeting of the Anti-Crisis Committee.
The sound of lighters and nearby airplanes make the voice hard to understand. The whole video seems absurd, childish even. Perhaps the producers were aware of that.
This is not a prank or a joke.
It's hard to say how many of Juicy Fields' defrauded e-growers felt a new hope when they watched the video. We wondered, if these people were serious about restarting the platform, why would they need to hide under masks and hoodies?
Soon after the video was posted, the JuicyFields.io website was revamped once again. Now, in early 2023, visitors to the site were greeted as in the good old days, with the same simple announcement that attracted thousands when the site first launched in 2020.
Grow cannabis. It's profitable. Become a potpreneur and benefit from the booming cannabis industry. Be among the first to join the movement.
The login was easy. Our old password still worked. Inside, we were informed that the website knew that we had bought a plant once and never received a payout for it. But for us, there was no way to access this money, which the website irritatingly called stoned balance.
Instead, there were new virtual cannabis plants on offer, but not only 4 different kinds as in the early days. Juicy Fields now offered 12 different kinds of cannabis plants, each with different specs for growth period, yield, and price.
It felt like somebody had had a lot of fun coming up with all these details, including new names. One plant was called Amnesia.
Was it possible that anybody was still willing to invest in this, forgetting all that had happened, all that money lost, all the defrauded e-growers?
During the course of our research, we had tried to get in touch with the people running the JuicyFields.io website several times. We never heard back from them.
But it seems they've been following our investigations and listening to Cannabis Cowboys. Because a few weeks after we launched the series, they sent us an email, which we have voiced for you.
Hey, Cowboys. It was interesting to watch the podcast. Here's the catch. There are 2 sides to every coin. And we sent you an email with a brief clarification.
The email was signed Juicy Fields DAO, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. There's already a new Telegram group called Juicy Fields DAO with more than 30,000 members.
In the email, the anonymous sender gave us their version of the events after July 14th, 2022, the day when the original platform went dark, investors got blocked from their accounts, and the company imploded.
The cause has been attributed to an in-house battle for control between the highest level of management, between two parties covered in a shroud of manipulation, deceit, and lies, not shy of a Hollywood blockbuster.
Well, we know all about the deceit and lies, the warring tribes and battles for control. It's all here in Cannabis Cowboys. But that Hollywood blockbuster, as they put it, was still writing itself. There was a small group of people who had clearly decided to bring Juicy Fields back from the dead.
Out of the ruins, a splinter emergency response group sprouted like a bud.
You will have noticed the reference bud, aka dried flower cannabis, the most valuable bit in the product chain. The email went on.
This bud, made up of developers, supporters, and volunteers, has a sole mission: to restore platform operations, honor investment, and continue with its initial aim of cultivating therapeutic medical cannabis.
The email also claimed that more than 50 investors had been repaid some or all of the money they had invested. We have no way of verifying that claim and can only say that so far we have not met anybody who would confirm they had received a refund.
On the contrary, we have spoken to IT security experts who have told us that the information e-growers needed to submit to get any refunds, the passport details and personal financial information, all that could be used to defraud them a second time and to steal their identities.
We can't figure out what is more amazing. The fact that the JuicyFields.io website is alive and kicking after all that has happened?
Or that there might be people out there who are still hoping against hope. People who are still willing to give Juicy Fields another try.
Whatever the answer, we had to concede that we still had no proof that the founders of Juicy Fields and the people behind the website were connected to Russian organized crime.
So we went through documents and old recordings again, looking for clues we might have missed. In the process, we came across an interview we did with Lars Olofsson, a Swedish lawyer trying to mount a class action lawsuit. We talked about him and his case in episode 3 of Cannabis Cowboys.
Olofsson was convinced early on that Russian criminals were behind Juicy Fields. Even in the wild weeks and months after the platform folded and new rumors and theories popped up every day, Olofsson believed in the Russian lead.
It bears all the trademarks for Russian mafia. They have done this a number of times and they know exactly how this is done.
Olofsson told us that in his career as a lawyer, he had worked on several cases involving financial scams. He said he had come to recognize the Russian mafia's signature traits.
I'm taking my hat off to the Russian mafia. If you're going to study how to do a business concept with a business strategy, with a marketing plan, with brand building, profiling, and everything, you shouldn't go to Harvard Business School or London School of Economics or Oxford or Cambridge. You should study the Russian mafia.
In late 2022, Olofsson published a short document about his lawsuit and repeated and detailed his accusations of the Russian mafia. For us, this was frustrating and fascinating at the same time. The more we struggled with the Russian lead, the more this Swedish lawyer seemed to be sure of it. What did he see that we didn't?
So before Christmas 2022, we decided to give Olofsson another call. We started by asking him what had happened since we last spoke.
So what happened since we talked last time was that a whistleblower coming forward, and this gentleman first called himself Anna.
So there she was again, Anna, the whistleblower we had been in touch with for weeks and who then suddenly ghosted us. At least Anna, well, wasn't dead. Anna had just decided it might be better to speak to a lawyer instead of to journalists, which admittedly did hurt our egos a bit. But that was not important now.
the whistleblower had contacted us and the lawyer around the same time. She had heard that we were investigating the Juicy Fields story, and she had also heard that Olofsson was trying to build a legal case.
Then we have a correspondence for some time, and then he came back to me and said that, well, my name is not Anna, my name is Anders. I'm one of the people behind this.
But the Swedish lawyer had moved faster than we did. While we were still debating whether this whistleblower was to be trusted and talking about a meeting in Germany, Olofsson had boarded an airplane to meet Anna/Anders somewhere in the middle of the night.
Olofsson told us that before becoming a lawyer, he had been a member of the Swedish equivalent of the Navy SEALs, an elite military outfit. He said he followed a strict security protocol when setting up the meeting, and all this might have helped to make the whistleblower trust him.
Again, this hurt our feelings a bit, but it was more than understandable. If this whistleblower was indeed part of the inner circle of a criminal organization that set up Juicy Fields, she or he was running a high risk.
But now that we found Anna or Anders, we were determined not to let them slip away again. So we asked the lawyer to relay our request for a meeting and an interview.
And Olofsson did not seem to mind. On the contrary, Olofsson said he intended to use the whistleblower as a witness in the legal case he was preparing. So some media exposure supplied by us probably fitted his strategy.
I'm going to talk to Anders this evening, and I'm going to propose to him and see how he reacts, and both about the dates and a meeting with you. Then I'm going to come back to you.
What can we say? It worked.
Andreas, where are we now?
It's cold, like -4 or 5, and it's snowy, and it's not far from the Russian border. We are here to meet a man from Russia who is supposedly telling us inside knowledge of Juicy Fields.
A whistleblower. What do you expect from the meeting tomorrow morning?
I hope he brings enough evidence to back up whatever he's telling us and doesn't change his mind in the last minute.
That's what's coming up in episode 8 of Cannabis Cowboys. Potemkin Villages. Cannabis Cowboys is a DW production, researched, written and presented by us,
Andreas Becker
and Nicolas Martin.
Our editor was Zulfikar Abani.
Audio editing and mixing by Simon Berghahn. Sound design, Warner Poland.
The executive producer was Judith Hartl.
Special thanks to Kate Laycock, Gabriel Borrett, Sarah Steffen and Eugen Theise.
Additional thanks to Henrik Böhme, Thomas Neufeld and the whole DW business team.
The cover was designed by Ilona Wendt and Nora Charlotte Tom. If you read about Cannabis Cowboys in a podcast newsletter, that's thanks to Sam Baker.
Boran Oeser took care of our promotion on social media and Christian Kühne of our distribution.
Legal advice, Tobias Würkert and Thomas Gademann. If you'd like to send us comments and feedback, send us an email to cannabiscowboys@dw.com.
And we are constantly looking for new leads in this story, so if you have any information regarding Juicy Fields, we would be grateful for your help. Get in touch and send us an email to cannabiscowboys@dw.com.
If you like this podcast, hit subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platform.
Thanks for listening.